love speaking with people who make history, especially when it just so happens to intersect with Star Trek. And that's who today's guest is. Blu Del Barrio, welcome to Trek Untold.
Hi, thank you, Matthew.
Well, it's great to meet you. We got a lot to talk about here today. And, Adira, let's talk about Adira here because that's what we're here to do. Adira has been through a lot, and they have grown up a ton since we first met them in season three. I'd love if you can kind of tell me what your interpretation is of who is Adira now in season five.
Oh, whoa. Okay, big question. I think, yes, they did have to go through a lot at a very young age. And I think often about the burn and the fact that they were 16 when that happened and, how little you are when you are actually 16.
Yeah.
And like also they don't have a lot of people closer to their age on the crew of Discovery, not that they're close to. So I think it very much kind of had to shoot them forward into like starting to adult early. And the other side of that is I think they were ready for it. I think they wanted that. I think they wanted to prove themselves, and I think that that's kind of where we land in this last season, which I really loved. Was them like they were finding their footing last season, but I think this season they're starting to like believe that they can do everything that they're being asked to do. They can do more than they're capable of. They are where they are supposed to be. I think, they made the choice to stay on Discovery, but I think now they believe that this is actually their place and their home and what their path was supposed to turn into.
I love that interpretation here. And I want to kind of go down this wormhole, if you will, if I can use a Star Trek term. Now, I don't quite know like how deep into Trek lore you are, how much of a fan beyond like Discovery or whatever, but I feel like Adira has become kind of like a modern version of Wesley Crusher. But instead of like dealing with like more so dealing with like contemporary problems of growing up and identity and internal understanding versus like where Wesley, I feel like it was all about, duty and purpose. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about that analogy?
I've actually me and Will had a conversation about this pretty recently, and what did he say? He said that he was so happy to see me and Ian doing what we were doing on Discovery, and it felt like he had done what he did so that we could be where we are now. And I think that like perfectly translates to what you were saying. I think that we got to focus on different things, and our journeys looked different because of the path that he took so early on in Trek. Um, and I really like that's what you think of in connection with Adira, because I also agree with that. That is a really special character to me and helped me get into Trek because of the age similarity, and
Right.
when I started, I hadn't seen any Trek, and so I had to like really deep dive and, go through everything as much as I could. And I really like clung on to Wesley.
We just need to
Yeah.
get Adira into the Wesley Crusher sweater now. That's got to be what happens
Yeah.
next. I'm glad you brought up Gray, Ian Alexander. And when we first met Adira, Adira and Gray, they were thick as thieves. And even so, once they were separated, other things kind of happened along the way in season five. And, fast forward to where we are now in season five. And, Ian, as of now, up to episode nine, has only appeared once. And it kind of mimics, the characters of Adira's storyline. It's kind of mimicking what's happening also right now to Blue as part of this crew, because, in some ways, maybe Ian Alexander was kind of like the other half of Blue. And now you're on the show and you got to spend a lot more time with Mary Wiseman, Anthony Rapp, Wilson Cruz. Like, has that ever come to your attention as well?
I guess not, maybe not specifically in the way that you were saying, but yeah, I guess it does. And it was really strange and felt really sad to not have Ian there as much as I did before, because we were also like, that was my person in Toronto when we were filming, that
Yeah.
Ian, and is very much still, we have the same friend group, and I love him to death. And I am so happy that I still get to see him all the time and be really close with him. But yeah, it was a very weird transition for me to, because yeah, then it even felt more so like, okay, a deer with the adults and that's it. Like
Yeah.
it was a very strange transition. Although I do think that with the separation, with that breakup, that little scene that comes up later of us having that phone call, I think that was really beautiful. And I'm really glad that they kept that in, because I don't think that there is a world where they would have just completely separated and not talked and not been connected in some way. You don't have a relationship like that and just completely disconnect. I think they wanted to keep their friendship first and foremost, like in the picture and alive. So I was really happy that when we did that.
And as a
Yeah.
viewer, it feels kind of real too, because I'm like watching you try to find your footing now without Ian Alexander, without Gray
Oh
as part
yeah.
of you, but also, with the actor there too. So it's like you really are kind of like starting fresh, and it's really this like awkward phase that you have to grow into.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very weird. And yeah, definitely a little wobbly at first. Not having him right next to me. But uh yeah, I agree with you.
And I didn't mention Tig Notaro, by the way, because I have a whole separate question for Tig right here. Because I mean, I just love watching Jet Reno, and I love when you get to interact with Jet. I gotta ask, like, I feel like she's just so hilarious to be around all the time. Like, were there any scenes ever that were just impossible to get through because you were just laughing too hard?
Yeah, I break in every scene that I've ever done with Tig. And it also is like I love working with Tig and I love being around Tig mainly because I feel like we operate from very like polar opposite places. I don't know if she would say the same, but like I operate from a very anxious place like 100% of the time. And she always seems very calm and very grounded and like her humor is very dry. So to play off of that for me is very fun and easy. Because in my mind and in like same with like Adira's mind is always like, do you like me? Do I don't know if you like me. Do you like me? And it's very, very fun to play off of that kind of energy when you have such a like bubbling anxious character like Adira on the other end of it.
Hmm.
Um, is always really, really fun. But yeah, I can't get through a scene without breaking at least once when Tig is there. It's really hard.
One of the big moments with your character of Adira was when they came out as non-binary. And I've done some research about that also as far as like your own self. And I'd love to kind of hear like, why this was such an important moment, not just for Adira, not just for Star Trek, but more so, why was this so important to you, Blue?
I was when I booked this role, only my two closest friends knew that something was going on with my gender identity. And the only other way that I was exploring it and felt safe enough to explore it was through auditioning because I was still in school and I didn't think in a million years that I would book anything that soon. I'd only been auditioning for like a few months. So for me, and I sort of felt I was like called out by my agent at the time who was like, would you audition for non-binary roles? And I sort of feel like she sort of knew. And it was my first bit of feeling like, okay, maybe this will help me actually kind of understand myself better since I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, I was very actively aware that I was having a lot of dysphoria and gender dysphoria specifically. Really got pushed back into the closet and didn't start to explore that stuff again until, the year that I auditioned for Star Trek. So that episode was really important to me because I think the reason it didn't come like as soon as we started with like met Adira is because I hadn't come out to my family, I hadn't come out to my friends. I was still coming out to myself, like redoing it over again from when I was like 8 years old.
Mm.
And I was terrified. I was absolutely don't want to curse, but absolutely terrified. Um, it was so scary. And that all of a sudden, like, something that I got bullied and, you know, told I was wrong for so many times when I was a kid was now going to be on television and I was going to have to explain like to everybody that I've ever known. Um, that was very scary.
Mm.
So doing that episode was really weird and like mirror-y and strange. But I'd come out to my family at that point, and like a lot of the people in our crew really helped me. Anthony and Wilson, Ian especially. So yeah, that was a very important moment for me in the show as well as my life.
And that like news that happened on the episode, that kind of shook up the Trek world for a lot of reasons. You had a large
Yeah,
group of people celebrating it, and then you had another group of people who viewed it as controversial and quote unquote woke and things like that. And
yeah.
I mean, we'll get into that in a second too about how sci-fi and Star Trek has always enjoyed having all people represented here. But like, what was your take on the very diverse fan reaction? And I still see this debated like in Star Trek fan groups pretty much at least like once a week.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of expected it mainly because Discovery alone before me already had a lot of those mixed reactions for a lot of different reasons, which were always very stupid. Like, a lot of the same thing. We are a very diverse show, and that's my favorite part about our show. But like, you're watching Star Trek. What where is the issue? Like, what is the problem? You know what like Roddenberry envisioned, you know what Trek stands for. why would you watch this show if that's the argument you're gonna have? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's very dumb. And like, watch something else. Go watch, like, we don't need to hear about it. Go watch something else. It's fine. That's that's where I'm at.
I mean, it's funny too, because again, I don't know how deep you've gone into Star Trek since you started on Discovery, but on DS9, the Trill, and
Hmm.
obviously you know about the Trill, but the Trill have
Yeah,
always been an allegory for trans people, whether some fans
yeah.
want to deny this or not. And I mean, you can go back. I don't know if you've ever read it, Blue, but there's you can find it on the Internet Archive, the Transgender Tapestry magazine from the 90s. And it's an article written no less by Bijo Trimble, who's a very important figure in Star Trek history. And it's basically highlighting all the gender diversity and especially spending some time on Jadzia as a trans person.
Really cool. Oh, I want to find that. That's really, really cool. I definitely want to read that. And yeah, I that's why I love DS9 so much. But yeah, it is very like, without saying it, you really are saying it. And I guess people could argue it because it wasn't like, set in solid stone in relation to like our world. And now it is, but it's like it's the same. We're saying the same thing
Hmm.
here. So it is frustrating, but I did expect it. I didn't expect though how much love, I think how big this other side of it would be, like the side that was very accepting and excited and loving. I didn't expect how large that would be. That
I'm
was
going to
really nice.
paraphrase a quote from that magazine also, because Bijou was like a big. They use the term liaison for Bijou,
Mm.
but she had asked Gene Roddenberry, where were all the gay and the lesbian and the trans characters, and Gene said, and I quote, everywhere. So it's like Gene always intended for it, but now it's like here in 2020s, we can actually now really show them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that makes me so happy. I want to read that really badly. I didn't know that existed, and now I'm very excited to read it. Oh, that's such a great way to answer that question. Yeah, it makes sense. If you look back at Trek, yeah, it makes total sense.
Now, when you heard that Discovery was not coming back for a sixth season, what was your initial reaction?
I It was rough because it was after we'd filmed the season. So it was, I mean, I think it was something that we all would have appreciated, like, and I had felt better about knowing beforehand, because you want to make something that, you know, you want to have like your big ending and you want to be prepared for it and you want to have time to process. So to find out after we'd all been done was like, wait, I didn't get to like process this, was really, really strange and hard. And the fact that we got to go back and like kind of put our ending all together and like film a little bit more was really, really nice. Um, just for like a second. But no, it was really sad. I do think though, on the other hand, that we got really lucky, because I think this is a really beautiful season to end on. I think there's a lot of like very classic Trek stuff in this season. There's a lot of adventure, like heavy adventure. There's a lot of exciting stuff, and I think that as a whole, like, I'm proud of this season to be the last one, even though we didn't know it was happening.
So I've been asking this question to a lot of your castmates who I've had the pleasure of speaking to over the last few weeks. And I want to ask you, Blue, what did you leave behind, to quote DS9? What did you leave behind? And what did you take with you from your time on Discovery?
Oof. I left behind quite a lot of imposter syndrome. Um, a lot of it. I still have some all the time. I just am very hard on myself. But I left behind a lot of it, which I'm really happy about. And I took, I think, a lot more confidence in a lot more confidence and like self-worth than I had when I started. Yeah. And that's really nice to think about too. So thank you for asking that.
Well, Blue, this has been awesome. And I just want to say thank you for your time on Discovery. And I'm very excited to see wherever you're going to go next. So thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thanks so much, Matthew.
Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars, is powered by the Rageworks Podcast Network and affiliated with Nerd News Today.